Today's story is a serious one because Warner Brothers games just killed multiple studios, and the one most people will recognize, of course, is Monolith. They made Shadow of Mordor, they made F.E.A.R, Condemned, and rather cruelly, they just celebrated their 30th anniversary. You probably also know the Nemesis system, which was what drove the Shadow of Mordor enemies. It was a fairly amazing system, and it was so good that WB patented it. And I'm sure they'd be happy enough to act as a bit of a patent troll against other people's game designs with it, but we know they actually loved it so much that they used it. They used the Nemesis system to ram Shadow of War full of game-killing monetization, which played a major factor in that game's performance, which, by the way, was really bad. Now, the project that would follow from Monolith, Wonder Woman, was also a disaster. It's now cancelled, but it's not a disaster in isolation because group-wide, the last decade itself has been a disaster. Today, we're going to discover why, and a little bit more dramatically, by going through all the sourcing surrounding this story, who is being blamed. Because there is a who. They're actually now a daily habit for me. You see, I was wasting so much time doom scrolling Twitter and Reddit. Now, I use Brilliant, and the deal that I've got is the best one, so you'll get that down below. Now, Brilliant makes learning fun and interactive, where you learn by doing across thousands of interactive lessons in maths, data analysis, programming, and AI, and it's all in their gorgeous site and app. Personally, I use the app. It is an absolute joy to use, and, well, the thing that matters is they're not rote learning, it's interactive. Their method is 6 times more effective than lecture videos, and that is something that I feel having gone through university and lectures. It's all interactive quizzes, so you can click, drag, build things, play, and basically you get like a fun tactile visualization of everything, and that means you can feel the concepts and it helps them click in your head. Now, in today's world, I cannot recommend their data pathway highly enough. It's recently been rebuilt, it's better than ever, and it helps you parse, visualize, and understand data. And what's cool is they've got real numbers from Airbnb, Spotify, and Starbucks, so you're kind of working with like actual big brand data. It's fun. And with this, you'll learn how to just get probability intuitively. And that's like vocationally really important, but you know what? It's also a big upgrade for just real life. And with the likes of that, you just develop an intuition that you can trust. So in a world where usually it's doom scrolling and brain rot and that stuff that just doesn't make you feel good, with Brilliant, you can actually use your phone, learn things, and feel good about it. So I can't recommend them highly enough. And at my link, brilliant.org/bellularnews, you get 30 days free and 20% off the annual plan. To begin, here are the details of the layoff. So Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and WB Games San Diego are all being shut down. Warner Brothers' statements basically insist that it is not a reflection of these teams or their talent. And I do somewhat agree, because what this really is a reflection of their end of February financial reporting. It's a pattern we see time and time again in the corporate world. Obviously, that hits games. Layoffs timed just before an earnings report that's often, well, a bad one, is something that is designed to show that the company is proactively tackling its problems. And for Warner Brothers, those problems are significant. Analysts expect them to have bad earnings. They have had bad earnings for many, many, many years. We'll dive into the details, the leaks, the people quite a bit later, but let's just get back to those studios for now. So, WB Games San Diego were working on an unannounced live service AAA cross-platform game. Woohoo! We don't know if that game is cancelled, but of course we do know that Wonder Woman from Monolith is actually cancelled. And from what we understand, that was not a particularly fun production to be on. More about that later. Then there's Player First Games. They're the studio behind Multiverses. Quite rough for them, because WB acquired that studio whenever Multiverses relaunched. Now that Multiverses is dead, so too are they. And that will sting extra hard for the developers and the players, actually, because the incoming Season 5 changes are widely seen to be excellent, with some people even thinking they could have turned the game around. Obviously now, we will never know. Let's move back to the explanations though. So explaining all this, WB say it's a, quote, strategic change in direction, and that while they recognize Monolith's, quote, storied history of delivering epic fan experiences, their focus needs to be getting the games business back to profitability and growth, which, look, fair enough, those are actually important for a business. It's just, well, whose fault is all of this anyway? We'll soon find out. Now, what this actually means is distilled in the form of an email from the current head of WB Games, J.B. Perrette, and this was leaked to Polygon. It's kind of ghastly reading. Here's a really amazing quote. Getting our swagger back happens one high-quality game release at a time, and our financial credibility gets rebuilt one fiscal quarter at a time, delivering what we said we would deliver and no big negative surprises. You know, JB, you didn't have to say swagger. It does seem a little bit weird. You axe 3 studios and say, hey, it's all part of our plan to get our swag back. That's kind of bad vibes. Now, that being said, there are lots of kernels of truth. It's no surprise that WB Games had in fact lost their swag. You just don't say it that way. What's key here is him saying no big negative surprises. And another thing he said, the product market fit and quality of too many of our new releases has really missed the mark. And it reminds me a piece of startup wisdom. Basically, right? Until you find product market fit, nothing else matters. No budget will save you. Product market fit is everything. On top of that, you build your empire. And it's fair to say that product market fit was not found in so many of their games. But the thing is, for large budget games, finding product market fit is bloody hard because it's a game. They do look pretty janky when they're half finished. It's a real challenge the AAA industry is finding. Now, that Suicide Squad was a surprise miss to them is honestly completely baffling to me, but the point of product market fit is obviously a true one. And more importantly for today's story, this all makes sense when you know this piece of information. JB is the new head of WB Games, and what he's doing here is drawing a line in the sand and throwing the last decade under the bus. And that was a decade led by one man, David Haddad. David Haddad led WB Games from 2013 to 2025, and he's just the sort of dude who would end up running a division of Warner Brothers. I don't necessarily mean that in a mean personal way, but I think his history explains that. So David graduated from Harvard Business School in 1991. He worked at Disney, Mattel, and others until 2006. He then joined Sierra, which was him getting into the games industry. Not long after that, he was the COO of Guitar Hero for Activision. He had had some prior experience in the toy sector. The troublesome thing is he was COO of Guitar Hero from 2008 to 2011. If you grew up when I did, you would know that is when Guitar Hero completely fell off a cliff and basically went into irrelevance. Not long after that, then, he began at Warner Bros. So, in short, right, he's very much the Harvard Business School management consultancy type guy. He's actually done management consultancy work. And understanding that, how he's been trained, the situations that he will have navigated across all of these years, I think we get texture. And I say texture because it can be too convenient to just, in retrospect, connect a bunch of easy to connect dots and say that is the explanation for everything. But I do think that texture is relevant, and sources will certainly suggest that it is later on in today's video. So David ran WB Games until, in January 2025, Variety broke the story of his departure. And the framing at the time was that he chose to step away, though Bloomberg's reporting does have sources blaming David's leadership, well, personally. To quote the reporting, a lack of strong, cohesive vision during Haddad's reign led to years of ineffectual trend chasing and wasted development time. So, is this a case of management consultancy types without deep game experience, simply having the wrong incentives, the wrong structure around them, the wrong mental tools for the job? To work that out, we can review his legacy. The good part of his legacy is the Hogwarts one, because Hogwarts Legacy is one of the best performing games basically ever. It managed to rank 14th in the best-selling games of 2024. That's the year after it released, so it was crushing games that came out this year, and it's got a definitive edition on the way that will help to keep those sales up. It's a huge win, and it's actually not alone in terms of wins. You've got TT Games with their Lego projects that often did pretty great. You've got NetherRealm's fighting games, which have done pretty solid too, but doesn't really make up for the losses. As an example, Suicide Squad underperformed. That led to WB taking a $200 million write-down. I'm sure continuing use for that game hasn't been great since, they just ended its live service. Then there's Multiverses and the Player First acquisition. That led to another $100 million write-down, and you've got some other projects like the Quidditch game that ended up just being a bit of a squib. And history truly is too funny here. Warner Brothers' attempt to capitalize on their Christopher Nolan-led Batman movies led to them chasing Marvel with the failed DC Extended Universe films. And it's just like that in video games. You have a banger trilogy of Batman titles, with the third one being a bit weaker, coming from Rocksteady, the Arkham games, and that led straight into a trend-chasing disaster, just that instead of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's live service games. But with a core difference, because you can whack together a writing team, actually get your principal, photography done pretty quick, and then just crack the whip and kill all the VFX artists, and you can get a torrent of slop movies. With video games, though, especially the Suicide Squad one, well, that is years and years and years and years of development until you found out that you failed. That's why games have ended up being so particularly dangerous. It's easy to pin all of this on David, and he certainly does carry a lot of blame. He was leader. He has literally got responsibility. And JB, the new leader, is very keen to draw a line in the sand. But there is just one problem for JB, and that's his own words. The trend chasing is David's responsibility as leader, but it was everywhere, even from JB, the guy who's trying to distance himself from the past. Here's a quote from JB from a while ago. Rather than just launching a one-and-done console game, how do we develop a game around, for example, Hogwarts Legacy or Harry Potter, that is a live service where people can come in and live and work and build and play in that world on an ongoing basis? Yes, that is him saying that. And the basic point is that having Hogwarts Legacy, the only non-Rockstar game to displace Call of Duty as a year's top seller since 2009, was not enough. But that's actually the thing here. Investors will always want more. They will always want Grand Theft Auto Online in a world where GTA Online exists and you can put your money in Take-Two Interactive. So what better than GTA Online-like revenue from a Hogwarts game? Well, we can certainly say what's worse. Suicide Squad, kill the Justice League. That's basically the point there. In trying to chase that, you end up killing the good thing that you did have. And there's another trade-off as well, even having something to ship in the first place. Rocksteady shipped 3 excellent genre-defining games between 2009 and 2015. Suicide Squad ate up the best part of a decade. No releases, no sales. That's got to sting. Its opportunity cost, right? Now, we're about to launch into the disastrous development of Wonder Woman in this video, but to feel just how bad all of this was, in the 9-year span where Warner Bros. Owned Monolith, but David Haddad was not in control, Monolith shipped 7 games. The whole F.E.A.R. series, the whole Condemned series, experiments like Guardians of Middle-earth and Gotham City Imposters, and the canonical oddity that was The Matrix Online. Rip Morpheus. And that's where Morpheus dies. Anyway, after Haddad took over, they only shipped 2 games, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. But that doesn't look good because Mordor released in 2014, so Haddad can basically not really take credit for that. The disastrous live servicified follow-up, well, that was under his watch, as was Wonder Woman. Here's what we know about that. Jason Schreier's sources lay out a clear picture of wasted time, lack of vision, and shameful levels of indecision. According to staff, Monolith spent 4 years working on a project that was apparently a science fiction IP, only for that to be cancelled. The Wonder Woman project then followed that up, with Jason claiming that it had not hit full production by the time of its 2021 announcement. And that's a curious thing, because by then, Monolith is reported to have been in a rough state, with, quote, almost its entire leadership team gone by 2022. In fact, what happened is many of them left that studio and they founded Cliffhanger Games under Electronic Arts, where they're currently working on a Black Panther game. So having dealt with a rough launch, then years just pissed away, it's pretty obvious, I think, that the early announcement of this title was a ploy to hire staff, which is a fairly common practice in the industry. You announce a big exciting project and you use that as a hiring tool. So, Monolith were not doing great, and allegedly making all of this worse was their boss, David. So, David is said to be a, quote, non-gamer in ways that made it difficult, right? The ways that made explaining product decisions difficult. He just did not have that sense of the market. And also, making things worse, staff would seemingly wait months on key decisions. And these are key decisions like, would we do E3? Or what will our next game be? And making any inherent weaknesses worse was the AT&T Discovery merger, right? With that looming over all the key people involved, leaders did not want to make decisions that could rock the boat, right? Or anything that could blow back and hurt the deal. And this whole mix of factors led to stupid stuff. One example, of course, is Monolith working on a sci-fi IP the WB didn't want for 4 years. It's also how WB Montreal were told to make a live service game, then managed to get the service bit dropped, leading to the rather odd game that was Gotham Knights. Now, the studio then pushed for a sequel to that game so they could basically iterate, capitalize on the experience they had to hopefully make something a lot better, but instead, leadership effectively turned them into a support studio. Now, Montreal's leaders did try to push back, and they sort of won, and then lost. The sad thing we've learned is they had a John Constantine pitch, so that died, but they did get a game greenlit, The Flash. of course, the universe-wide "we are really tired of Ezra Miller" thing happened, and that, of course, led to No More the Flash game. Now, they were said to be assisting in Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman is a project that was going nowhere fast. WB clearly did not believe they would see enough of a positive ROI from the Wonder Woman project soon enough for it to be worth bothering with, right? Like, if they thought this game would basically do well, they would have kept it going. But as it stands, even if they thought it would do well, but way too much in the future, well, that's not really going to support their goals of getting back to short-term profitability and increasing their margins. So that game was cancelled, Monolith was shut down, which perhaps shows the, I suppose, damage that Monolith had accrued over the years. It's like not in a state where it could be sold to another company, perhaps. WB Montreal have lost a support gig, and they are said to currently be pitching a Game of Thrones title. So, Montreal have survived the cut, but they're very much not out of the woods yet. One thing we do know is that JB is keen to nurture his swagger, and if you cut through all the BS, it's pretty clear he's actually going to have the time to do that, because to say that WB's lineup is sparse would actually be generous. So they've got a 3D Game of Thrones RPG, but that's done by Netmarble, so that's a licensing thing. Then they've got the director's cut of Hogwarts Legacy, they've got mobile games, and likely a silver bullet, lots of IP, right? So you can license your DC things to Fortnite as an example. That will probably get them some money, and they were allegedly anyway not really willing to do a lot of that whenever multiverses existed, because they were worried about diluting the DC stuff. They wanted that to be multiverses. Now that multiverses is dead, hey, go, license everything. With all that, JB claims they'll be profitable in 2025, but it will take 2 to 3 years to actually rebuild. And rebuilding, funnily enough, is exactly what James Gunn is doing. He's the head of DC now, and he's doing that on the film side, but in interviews he has talked about meetings with the game teams and basically having more centralized leadership over, you know, what the hell do we do with our DC properties? But to me, it's how we answer a few questions that really lands this home. Does all of that sound better? Yes, it does. Was WB Games burning money? Yes, it was. Does a robust economy need bad businesses to fail? Yes, I can continue. I mean, if you are working in an economy in one of those bad businesses, essentially a zombie business has been propped up that's got no business existing, is that good for your long-term career? Is that good for your mental health? No, it's not. But is the price paid by those who, by virtue of being leadership, are actually responsible? The answer is no. And here, while it does look like a better direction, all it took to get there was multiple studios, hundreds of jobs, and nearly a decade of wasted work. This happens at all scales. This is one example. Bobby Kotick, who, was responsible for a lot of very damaging decisions, he got off with a, over $300 million valued golden parachute. Well, if you want another story along those lines, you should see what happened to Phoenix Labs and Dauntless. It's honestly deeply suspicious, and you can watch it next.